Well, hello. Welcome to the third edition of Cave's Corner over here at Accuracy in Media. We have a great show for you, and the key word is deep. We are going to talk about deep federal cuts with Brother Bill Thomas. How are you this morning?
I'm well. Thank you for asking.
Good.
I appreciate being asked.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to ask you and to be with you on this fine morning.
That's
so
great.
we are going to deal with deep on three levels. We are going to deal with deep federal cuts that are long overdue. We are going to deal with the deep state again. We may never get away from that.
No, I don't. I think it's impossible, actually, to get away from the deep state. It'll always be there.
And last but not least, we're going to deal with deep, and I have to say bleep, because that's the situation we're in with North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And
deep kimchi.
Somebody is going to be in deep something.
Deep kimchi.
That's interesting. I hate when you bring up words that I don't know, because I don't know what you mean.
You know, it's Korean coleslaw, essentially.
Okay.
Highly spiced Korean. It's good for you. It keeps things moving.
It will.
If you catch my drift.
Yeah, I do. Eventually I'll get it. Okay, so what I'd like to show everybody is this is my second favorite cover of the Washington Post. And of course, the first one was them announcing that Donald Trump was president. I have saved 2 copies of that for my progeny. But this is great. I have been waiting for this all my life, being a Washingtonian. Trump seeks deep federal cuts. And boy, I'll tell you.
There's that word again, deep.
Deep. Deep is the key word today. So what's interesting is how deep they are and where they are.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very interesting.
And when you look at this and you step back and you take a look, what I see is you have deep cuts in the left's favorite places to spend money.
That's the most beautiful thing about this. This is something Republicans have been talking about doing for as long as I can remember. And Donald Trump has been the only one, and he's not really a Republican in the strictest sense of the term, but he's been the only Republican president to ever go public with this stuff. And it's fascinating to watch the reaction.
Well, the reaction is great. So in the media, they go, "My God, this guy's actually doing it," and I'm like, you know, he did run on this. Mm-hmm. And on Capitol Hill, it's, "Oh my gosh, this guy's actually doing it," and they're like, "Well, you ran on it too. What's wrong with that?"
Well, it's freaking out the Republicans on the Hill.
Uh-huh.
They don't know what to do, and they know that Trump is popular. They know that Trump is popular with the Republican base, so they don't want to resist him, but they can't pull themselves away from doing what the Democrats want them to do.
And it's the American people that are saying, finally,
somebody
has done this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I want everybody to do before we go any further with this, I want you to image this in your mind. Now, I don't want to say like Howard Beale did in the movie Network, stick your head out the window and say, "I'm mad as hell and not going to take it anymore," because I'm afraid with our vast audience how disrupting that could be. But I need everybody to understand when they're talking about spending money in the federal government, they're not talking about taxing the rich. They get out of it. They're not talking about taxing you anymore because they are taxing you all they can get away with. They're talking about spending money we don't have and making it so that the debt service for our grandchildren is so horrific that either the whole economic thing collapses or they are so burdened with debt they can't even get the basic things that government ought to be doing because they have wasted all the money on the things government shouldn't be doing. So when you hear them talk about, "Oh my gosh, you're cutting spending on Meals on Wheels," and they need to spend more money, they're talking about stealing from your children and grandchildren, and I don't know anybody who would do that.
I can think of a few, but it's not something people would want to talk about doing.
But that's what people need to keep in mind.
They're talking about doing that, and it's loathsome. But you know, they've talked about much worse.
Right, but they're always putting up the image of, "Oh my God, we're gonna do this horrible thing to children or to old people or whatever."
And speaking of which, they try every time they threaten to cut money, or every time the idea of cutting money from Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is going to be eliminated under Trump's budget. Who do they truck out? Big Bird.
Right.
The kids are heartbroken. You know.
And what the supporters of these cuts need to do is to truck out pictures of our children and grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And just think, you know, I'm sure the executive, the guy that runs public broadcasting, probably makes $500,000 a year.
Easily, if not more.
Right.
Oh, there's no question.
So when you step back and take a look at it, here's a couple of figures I like. EPA and State Department are getting cut by about 1/3. Labor's getting cut by 1/5. HHS, HUD, NPR, PBS, NEA. These sounds like the
And notice what those are, though. Those are bastions of liberalism, those departments. Yes. I mean, the Labor Department is almost Bolshevik. I mean, the guy who ran the Labor Department, Tom Perez, is now head of the Democratic National Committee. This guy's like a Marxist.
And he comes out of Montgomery County, Maryland.
Casa de Maryland. Yeah, Montgomery County, Maryland might as well be like the People's Republic of Montgomery County.
We are broadcasting, podcasting, from a building right outside of Washington, D.C., and we are surrounded by the deep state. They live here. They work here. They want to keep everything going, and Tom Perez is a perfect example. From top to bottom, from these people who have a GS-8 job all the way up to the top, they have one thing on their mind, and that is how do they keep this going at the expense of the American people.
Here's something people have to keep in mind. Washington, D.C., there are over 3,000 counties in the United States. Washington, D.C. is surrounded by 6 of the 10 wealthiest counties in the country, and there's a reason. This not only represents a job for these people in the deep state, this represents income, and in some cases, vast amounts of it.
This is not 2 people making $30,000 a year trying to do it. This is a 2-income household where they're making $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year with benefits that the American people can only dream of.
I think we're not talking about people making average salaries in government. We're talking about a whole complex of industries really that surround government too. The lobbyists, the people who are trying to influence government every day. But I saw some statistics a few weeks ago. The average guy, it used to be if you went into government work, you accepted the fact that you're a public servant and you're probably going to make less, and you're sacrificing the money you might make outside of government for the security of a government job. And now government workers on the average, when you consider sick leave and pensions and everything else, make something like $124,000 a year. The average worker in the private sector makes around $75,000. It used to be the opposite.
It is flipped, and it's now. If you went to work for the government, the bargain was you made less, you probably couldn't get fired, you had a pension, you had some benefits.
And it was a noble calling kind of thing.
And now it is flip-flop. They make almost twice what the private sector. You guys who are paying the bill. So understand, when you see these people in media who are their lockstep partners in this deep state thing to defeat Trump from defunding the government, these people are fighting for their disease, for their life, to keep this going.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I was talking, not funny. It's not funny at all, actually. When I say funny, I meant interesting. I was talking to my cousin who was a Navy corpsman in Vietnam at the height of the Vietnam War. And I gave him this analogy, and he said, man, that is unfortunately right on. Mm-hmm. And that was the fact that when they were fighting with the South Vietnamese troops, they pretty much guesstimated that 20% of the South Vietnamese troops fighting with them were VC. Were really
fighting against them, in other words.
Were really with the communists. And that's what Trump has on several levels. He has that throughout the Washington area. It's about 110% in the media. But inside the government itself, you've got the entrenched government workers that want to stop what Trump is doing. They want to continue to harm the American people with burdensome taxes and debt. And you have it. Well, I think that's part of what we're seeing on the spy thing and in the releases.
There's no question about it. Government workers tend to be liberals. And we're not going to talk about health care, but just briefly, the idea was not Obamacare wasn't specifically designed to improve health care. It was designed to federalize the health care workforce and make them Democratic voters. If you look at the last election, look how few votes it really does take to decide who the president's going to be. A few million votes, one way or the other, determines the outcome of the election. If you can get 5 million federal employees working in health care, you're going to win every election for the foreseeable future.
Brother Thomas, you bring up a key point. Now, when they designed Washington, D.C., what they wanted to do, Pierre L'Enfant was the designer. I think
George Washington's little French buddy.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So what they wanted to do was to avoid the problem they had in Paris, where the mob in Paris could control the national government. So they established Washington, D.C., they carved out part of Maryland, part of Virginia, and you couldn't vote for president, you couldn't vote for Congress, you couldn't vote for local government. You had no power if you lived in Washington, D.C.
It was a so-called federal enclave, which it still is. People
Right.
don't understand that. It's not a city in the normal sense, and it's not a state. It was designed by the Constitution not to be either one of those things.
But here's the problem.
What
And
is
you
it?
just brought it up. That you need so few votes to win these elections because 40 some odd percent are going to vote for either party regardless of who's running. And the federal government the people that live and work for the federal government have expanded so far beyond Washington, D.C.'s border. They have overflowed into Maryland, into Virginia, that the majority of population in Virginia is now in Northern Virginia.
Right.
And the majority of the population in Maryland is in the Washington suburbs.
Kind of where we are at this exact moment.
They are exactly where we are. And they control how those states vote for president in the Electoral College.
Yes, they do.
And now Virginia, which used to be a red state, is now a blue state, Democrat. Maryland has always been a Democrat state. So you have about almost 30 electoral votes that are automatically going to go to the Democratic Party because of Washington, D.C. So the whole intent to have D.C. not influence who's going to control that the government workers, the government, the people in the nation's capital wouldn't control the national government has been thwarted by the growing size of the federal government.
By the size of the government. And as you said, these little enclaves, these enclaves of government workers in Northern Virginia and the suburban area of Maryland really control which way those states go electorally in a presidential election. Look at Washington. 93% of the vote went to Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
So that's the kind of place we're talking about here.
So one of the things the left has talked about a lot is they want to have D.C. get to be a state.
Good luck.
Well, actually, I've changed positions on that. I'm okay with that as long as they throw in Prince George's County, Montgomery County in Maryland, Arlington, and Fairfax, and if the government keeps growing, we'll have to throw in some more. So we can throw in those counties. Let's give them Washington, D.C.
Expand the boundary.
And then Maryland and Virginia will go back to being regular states that'll vote for president based on the person.
Well, Arlington, Alexandria used to be part of Washington.
Yes.
And so take them back, expand the boundaries of the city a little bit, make it a state. Look, you'd have to change. It's never going to happen, though. You'd have to change the Constitution. They tried it when Carter was president. You have to amend the Constitution, and that requires 75% of the state legislatures to agree to any change in the Constitution. You get 6 years to do it. And, when Carter was president, the amendment passed the House and Senate. Carter signed it. But then the hard part comes. You have 6 years to get 75% of the state legislatures to sign on, and they could only get, I think, 16 or 17. It's never going to happen.
I hate when I bring up a really good idea and you throw cold water on it with reality.
I can't help it. I'm a realist. I just can't help it. I can't help myself sometimes.
All right, so let's get back to the other way to solve the problem. So right now, I have been on the Trump train since the Trump train pulled out of their station, and anybody that has had the misfortune to follow me on social media has been subjected to that. And I have criticized Brother Trump, not at all, but there is a criticism coming out of my lips right now, and I'll tell you what it is. He went to work right away. He works hard. He does not party. He does not. He just is dedicated to working, and he did not run to be president. He ran to, like the other guys, just wanted to be the president. He actually wanted to get the job done, and he appointed a great cabinet. But there's a problem, and the problem is with the Indians. He's got great chiefs, but he doesn't have enough Indians. And he has to staff the government with political appointees, and they are not getting that done fast enough. So they have got too many people in the deep state working against them, not just in the CIA and the FBI, which is coming up in the news and certain issues, but on all the small levels. And they have got to get rid of these people. And you brought up information about how long it takes to get people in and out.
9 months. The average is 9 months. And well, let's look at George W. Bush. By the time 9/11 rolled around, Bush had been president for approximately 9 months, and it was right around that time that he basically had his team in place, the top tier, the second tier, the third tier of political appointees in place to do what the administration would like done. And Trump, you could see the problem right off the bat with his first immigration executive order. You had a holdover, Sally Yates, you had a holdover in the Justice Department who refused to defend this presidential order in court. So that's the kind of kind of problem you can run into. And your government's full of these people anyway. I mean, you have to whip the bureaucracy into shape. That's quite an effort.
So what the media has pointed out, and I think the American citizenry has pointed out, is that Donald Trump has been very bold. He's come out with bold budgets. He has been bold in his selection on the Supreme Court. He is following through on what he has said he was going to do. But the problem is he needs to be even bolder. In order to get this stuff through the courts, I think he needs to follow up on Newt Gingrich's idea, which is to reorganize the courts. You can take them, you can add to them, you can reorganize them, you can do that, and you can get rid of these people in the judiciary that think they're in the legislature and making laws. And I think he needs to be bold enough to do that. The only thing that's going to happen is the media is going to push back, but they're doing that anyway. And he needs to find a solution to this 9-month dilemma. He does not have 9 months. And he's not waiting on anything else. He is getting in and changing things with executive orders, with getting rid of regulation. He put Obamacare, getting rid of Obamacare on the table fast. But he doesn't have 9 months to wait to get these other people out and in. And he also has the problem that he can't go to just the regular pool of Republicans.
Because they're not going to help him.
Half of them aren't going to help him.
No. Well, it shows the importance of having a good transition. What this suggests to me is that Trump probably didn't think he was going to win. I mean, he wanted to, but he probably didn't think he would. And he didn't have the kind of transition in place starting back in August. Both parties, first, have transition operations going, and his was not what it should have been, because when he got elected president, the transition should have been in high gear at that point, and it wasn't. He didn't have the people, and he didn't have the organization really to take over the government on day one the way he should have. And you can't really take it over on day one, but the process should have been well along at that point. It wasn't.
This is why he has to be bold and think outside the box. This is the problem if you contrast it between Nixon and Reagan. I was talking to a friend of mine who got on with he got a job working with the Reagan administration, and it was a year and a half in. Is how long it took for them to vet him. And he replaced a Democratic operative who literally had been in the Reagan administration for a year and a half. Now, when Nixon took over, because Nixon had been in Congress and had been vice president, the day he took over, the ticker tape was rolling to fire all these people.
Oh, I want resignations on my desk.
Boom, right away, and he had people to put in. But the problem is Reagan didn't have that, because Reagan wasn't a Washington insider, and it took him a long time, and it hurt Reagan. And Trump needs to go back to his roots and do the New York Minute and figure out a way to get this to happen faster, because we don't have 9 months. We really don't.
Right. No, it's important that all those things happen, but you got to remember he's gotten a kind of resistance from Capitol Hill by Democrats and Republicans that I've never seen before in my life. I've watched this stuff for a long time, and Trump's got a real challenge in the Hill, in the personification of what he's facing up there. In these Republicans. Look at Lindsey Graham. He and McCain. He's got, with 2018 looming, there's one thing that could save Trump in a sense. I mean, he's got to do what he's got to do here, but you've got the 2018 congressional elections coming up. If he can win 10 of those 25 Democratic seats up for re-election, he'll have a 62-vote majority in the Senate. And you don't know which way Lindsey Graham and McCain are going to go. He'll have a filibuster-proof majority. Well, he can do lots of things.
The Republicans should have had that for a long time. And you look at how many states have voted red in the Electoral College for president, and that they had so many Democratic senators coming out of there. All right, we got to move on. But Trump has got to solve this problem. I don't think he can wait until those midterm elections. I think he's going to
work. He's going to be on it right now. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel here if he can pull that off.
And there's also a problem that's coming into play. We have a new. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I seem to recall.
Yes. Well, we're old enough to do that. This is not dyed white hair on the pair of us.
No, it's real.
There is a North Korean missile crisis. Now, we already know the North Koreans have nukes, and but they're now developing a missile. And the word on I actually listened to MSNBC and today, and they said that the North Koreans are on full bore, high speed. Everything is at stake to develop a missile that can reach the United States with a nuclear-tipped weapon.
But that would probably just be one missile.
Right. But
We're not
that does
talking
them.
an onslaught.
It raises two questions. How would we negotiate with the North Koreans with the reality that they might be able to nuke an American city? And how would the North Koreans feel? Are the North Koreans willing to do two things? Send a nuke to the United States and to also, it would only reach the West Coast. Are they willing to nuke another communist state like San Francisco or Seattle?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
So Tillerson opened up the game, and every other administration has come in and said, "Oh well, we've got to negotiate. We need the diplomacy." In other words, they are laying prostrate on the ground, begging North Korea to do something, who will agree to do it, and then they aren't going to do it, and North Korea goes farther down, makes nuclear weapons, makes more of them, is bigger, more of a problem because nobody knows how to negotiate. So what did Donald Trump do?
Hire Dennis Rodman.
Not that good. He did two things. He sent B-52s to Japan, and Tillerson opened up the sense of, well, diplomacy has failed, so he has put the North Koreans on,
That's a signal.
on notice.
That's pretty interesting. Well, I mean, Trump is again. You've got to remember where Trump is coming from. He's built buildings in New York, which has got to be the most difficult thing you could ever possibly want to do. Look at the opposition he's probably dealt with in New York: the labor unions, New York politicians, crooked vendors, and then rivals who are suing him every step. I mean, I don't think Kim Jong-un could even build a one-story building in New York.
And I think you bring up the key point, and that is that Donald Trump is one of the most competent people that has ever occupied the Oval
Without
Office.
question.
He has not only succeeded, and you take a look at commercial real estate in New York City, you are competing with the smartest, most ruthless group of people on the planet Earth. I mean,
there's no question about it.
They are ruthless. They are brilliant.
They'll come at you from every conceivable angle, and your rivals, your other developers.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, the other developers, they're going to sue you.
And talk about and people, and I used to laugh. They say, "Oh, Donald Trump doesn't know anything about politics."
Dealing
in commercial real estate in New York City.
This is the perfect training for dealing with a tyrant.
Right.
Working in New York City in the commercial real estate business.
Now the problem is Trump has never dealt with anybody like this guy in North Korea.
Kim Jong-un.
He's used to dealing with smart people that could they had things at stake. This guy could be so stupid as to put his country at risk of being nuclear.
I don't know if he's that stupid. I don't know if he's probably fairly stupid. But I don't know if he's that stupid.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. What indicates to me that he's not is that how ruthless he has been in his country. I mean, if you look at what happens every 6 months or so, he takes a general or a family member and cuts their head off, totally terrorizing absolutely everybody in the country.
Well, he assassinates them or executes them with a 50-millimeter anti-aircraft shell. I mean, they're just obliterated. It's just like a blur.
And I think that tends to dissuade people from trying to dislodge him from his seat of power.
Well, maybe not. I think there might be something going on beneath the surface in Korea. There probably always is in North Korea. But the assassination of his half-brother in the airport in Indonesia suggests something really strange might be going on there. This was a Kim. You know, he was a brother, a half-brother. He would have been a suitable replacement. Apparently, he was living in Macau. He's like a playboy kind of guy, but he's smart enough probably to run the country. And the fact that he was eliminated suggests that there's maybe a faction in North Korea that could have imported this guy and overthrown Un and put the half-brother in his place. I don't know. I mean, who knows what's really going on there? But it does suggest there might be something happening, like a palace coup was in the works.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, you're looking at it that this guy was potentially somebody to replace him, and I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the guy in power right now is continuing to terrorize everybody. I mean, every 6 months he kills somebody that's either a relative or a general or one of his people, and they're like, well, man, if you're going to kill your relatives and the people that are loyal to you, man, I'm not even going to whisper treason.
Well, this is, remember Kremlinology?
No.
This is kind of
illuminate me, brother Thomas.
This is you're getting to the essence of Kremlinology, trying to figure out what these things mean. You know, in the arrangement of people in Lenin's tomb for May Day. I mean, we're so and so.
Oh, I see.
You know, And this borders on criminology, trying to figure out what is happening in North Korea and what all this stuff means.
Well, we're coming close to the end here, and I've got a parting shot that I want to get, and I want to see what parting shot do you have on what's happening, what's happened, the things that we've talked about here. Mm-hmm. What would you like to offer here to the
we're talking about the deep state.
Audience?
There are 3 letters. These are the most feared letters in the lexicon of bureaucrats in Washington. RIF, RIF, reduction in forces. Government workers believe, and they're largely right about this, that they have jobs for life. And any threat to their security is these are fighting words. And right now you're hearing about a reduction in government forces, and you are talking about an entrenched resistance. You haven't seen anything like this yet.
Well, we need it. When I was born, the richest city in the country was Detroit, because you had this vast middle class that was making a lot of money making things like cars. And now the richest city is Washington, where all we do is make trouble for other people. But I have to tell everybody there is a greater threat than anything we have yet discussed.
My God,
there really is. There really is. And I feel like Churchill in the 30s trying to warn the Parliament about aircraft production in Germany, and these guys, because everybody has spurned him. I have even raised this flag of warning here at Accuracy and Media and been ignored on it, but it's called the Irish factor. Everybody, this is terrifying. Everybody with a speaking role in the Trump administration is Irish. Bannon, Conway, Sean Spicer, and who else am I missing?
Mulvaney.
Well, you got Mulvaney at OMB. You've got Kelly over at Homeland Security. And the Irish thing is worse than that. On Capitol Hill, it's Ryan, McCarthy, and McConnell. You've got 2 of them in the Supreme Court. And in the shadow of, remember how we were talking about Maryland and Virginia?
Right.
The current governors of those 2 states are Irish, and their predecessors were Irish. This Irish factor is seeped into government at every level when it comes to speaking roles, and it's okay with that, but now they have them with decision-making roles. And this is really scary to have one group of people, as unreliable as the Irish are, sneaking into power, and everybody has ignored it. I have raised this flag before, and no wonder it happens, because the media is behind it. Even on the left, you got O'Donnell and Matthews on MSNBC, but over at Fox, it's like a requirement. And I'm not talking about just Hannity and O'Reilly and Megyn Kelly, but you got Shannon Bream and Trace Gallagher, and then you got people.
It's like a Catholic high school reunion.
And then you got them hiding behind Italian names like Cavuto.
Right.
It is really dangerous.
What's the appeal, do you think, of the Irish?
Well, I mean, they like to fight,
and
they like to talk. And in the day, they used to be almost exclusively for the Democrats because the Democrats were in power. And now you have them fighting for the Republicans. They go with the winners. So if you want to follow the winners, follow the Irish, and that's where they are in politics.
My mother used to say, God invented whiskey so the Irish wouldn't conquer the world, but it might be happening.
Well, they need to start drinking it because the world's at risk. And that's it for us today. Thank you very much for viewing, and we look forward to seeing you next week.